Ever noticed that the moment you think deeper, people turn away because depth makes them feel small? And when that happens, they don't call you thoughtful. They call you weird. They call you arrogant. Not because you said anything wrong, but because your presence makes them uneasy. Your depth reminds them of their own surface. Your clarity exposes the limits they would rather not face. Look through history, from Socrates to Darwin to Tesla. The world has always resisted brilliant minds, not because they lack truth, but because they made others uncomfortable. Think about it. A rich person doesn't make you feel foolish. A strong person doesn't make you question your worth. But an intelligent person, their presence forces comparison. Not because they are arrogant, not because they said anything cruel, but because they reveal everything others would rather keep hidden. You are not distant because you push people away. You are distant because your presence shows them too much. So society creates its quiet punishment. The deeper you think, the more you are excluded. Not because you are wrong, but because you are too right, too soon. This is the paradox Arthur Schopenhauer saw nearly 2 centuries ago. A truth we are still reluctant to admit, that intelligence is rarely welcomed in its time. It is resisted, it is feared, and often it is hated. So the real question isn't simply why does this happen? It's what does it mean for you, for the one who sees further, for the one who refuses to shrink. And this is where the mirror effect begins, when intelligence changes everything without a word. And that is the real danger. Intelligence doesn't need to argue. It doesn't need to fight. Its presence changes the world around it. But how? And why does simply walking into a room make others feel exposed? This is what Schopenhauer called the mirror effect. Your mind acting like a silent reflection, forcing people to measure themselves against you whether they want to or not. He saw that intelligence functions like a mirror, not a mirror of appearance but of ability. When someone more perceptive walks in, others instinctively measure themselves against them. It isn't a choice, it's automatic. Modern psychology confirms this. Brain scans reveal that when people feel intellectually outmatched, the amygdala, the brain's threat detector, lights up. The same system that responds to danger activates when faced with superior intelligence, your quiet mind becoming loud in other people's nervous systems. In other words, your insight feels to others like a physical threat. And it's not just one-on-one. In groups, the effect is magnified. A study at Stanford found that people feel far more threatened by intelligence in social settings than in private conversations. Why? Because intelligence doesn't only test their self-image, it tests their social standing. No one wants to look small in front of others. This explains subtle patterns you may have noticed. In a meeting, the colleague who makes everyone feel clever is praised, while the one who exposes flaws, even gently, is sidelined. On social media, simple slogans go viral, while thoughtful ideas vanish in the noise. It isn't about truth, it's about comfort. Schopenhauer argued that mediocrity has a hidden power. It reassures. Average minds keep the peace because they never force anyone to confront their own limits. That's why mediocrity is welcomed, while brilliance is resisted. You've probably felt it. When you share a deeper thought, the mood shifts. When you see connections others miss, the room grows quiet. Not because you were unkind, but because clarity makes people uncomfortable. And so the mirror effect continues. The intelligent mind reflects, and society looks away. But what happens when that reflection doesn't just make people uncomfortable? When it threatens the instincts their survival depends on. This is the trap most people never see. We say we admire intelligence. We claim to value deep thinking. But do we really? Look closer. Society praises intelligence in speeches, in textbooks, and ceremonies. But in daily life, it resists it. Not openly, not violently, most of the time, but in subtle ways, through avoidance, dismissal, or quiet rejection. Why? Because the human brain was not designed to seek truth. It was designed to seek survival. And survival, for most of history, meant belonging. It meant being accepted by the group, following the tribe, never standing too far apart. To stand out was to risk exile. And exile, in a world of predators and scarcity, meant death. This ancient wiring still runs in us. It explains why people instinctively resist those who disrupt harmony. When you speak with clarity, you weren't just sharing an idea. You're signaling difference, and difference feels dangerous. That's why your depth doesn't always inspire curiosity. It activates defense. Psychologists have a name for these defenses: cognitive biases, shortcuts the brain takes to protect the ego. And they explain why intelligence so often collides with resistance. Take the Dunning-Kruger effect. The less people know, the more confident they feel. Meanwhile, those who truly understand hesitate, aware of the complexity. This flips the world upside down. The loudest voices are often the least informed. And in the noise of certainty, the quiet truth is drowned. You've seen this before. The colleague who speaks with absolute confidence, even when wrong. The politician who reduces complex problems into simple slogans. The influencer who thrives not by being accurate, but by sounding sure. Confidence wins the crowd, while intelligence waits in silence. Then comes the backfire effect. When a core belief is challenged, people don't soften, they harden. Instead of reconsidering, they double down. It's why debates rarely change minds. Presenting evidence often creates resistance. Because truth doesn't always liberate, it often threatens. And if you've ever shared an insight that was instantly dismissed, not because it lacked value, but because it hit too close to home, you felt this trap firsthand. So the paradox deepens. The smarter you are, the more you see. The more you see, the less you can ignore. But the less you ignore, the more you stand apart. And standing apart awakens the very instincts that make people resist you. This is why your insight doesn't always bring connection. It often brings silence. It often brings distance. And if you felt that weight, you already know where this path leads. Not into applause, not into welcome arms, but into the darker valley of isolation, where clarity becomes both your gift and your burden. What happens when seeing too much leaves you standing alone? When the clarity that sharpens your vision also strips away your belonging. This is the hidden cost of intelligence, not the applause it was supposed to bring, but the distance it quietly creates. At first you wonder if it's you, if you're too blunt, too intense, too different. But in time you realize it isn't arrogance that separates you. It's vision. When you see more, you simply can't unsee it. And most people would rather look away. So you learn to stay quiet, not because you lack words, but because you know they will not be received. And that silence becomes the valley, a place of distance, a place of weight, where you carry clarity like a burden no one else can share. History shows this valley clearly. Socrates stood before the court of Athens, not accused of theft or violence, but of asking questions. He could have fled. He could have begged. Instead, he drank the poison calmly, proving that truth was worth more than life itself. Centuries later, Nikola Tesla walked the streets of New York with notebooks full of visions. He dreamed of lighting the world with free energy, of inventions that could change civilization forever. But he died alone in a hotel room, his brilliance unrecognized, while others built fortunes on his ideas. They weren't wrong. They weren't failures. They were simply too far ahead. And if you've ever felt ignored, dismissed, or even mocked for seeing further than others, you've touched the same valley they once walked. But let's not romanticize it. The valley is not easy. It carries a weight few admit out loud. Loneliness that creeps in even in crowded rooms. The sense of being present yet apart. The frustration of watching shallow voices rise while thoughtful ones are ignored. The doubt that whispers, is it worth speaking at all? These are not signs of weakness. They are the natural friction of depth in a world that prefers simplicity. Is it any wonder so many thinkers retreat into solitude? Not because they dislike people, but because most people cannot meet them where they stand. And yet this is not the end of the story, because while the valley feels like exile, it also holds a strange gift. Here, away from the noise, you begin to refine your thoughts. Here in the silence, you see more clearly than ever. And though the world may resist you now, history proves it will one day depend on the very truths it once rejected. If you've made it this far, it means something important. This video didn't just play in the background. It found you. That's no accident. Because only those who carry this weight, only those who feel this distance, stay with it. If you're still here, it means this message was meant for you. But what if this darkness you've endured was never punishment at all? What if it was preparation? Because isolation doesn't only take, it also shapes. Silence isn't just the absence of voices. It is the place where your vision sharpens, and the weight you've carried is the very weight that makes you unshakable. What if the loneliness you felt wasn't proof of weakness, but proof of refinement? What if the distance from others wasn't exile, but preparation? History shows this clearly. The most resilient thinkers were not destroyed by isolation. They were tempered by it. They learned not only to see, but to choose when to reveal what they saw. And that choice, that strategy, turned intelligence from a burden into power. Not every truth belongs in every room. Not every idea deserves to be scabbed into ears unwilling to hear it. And this is the lesson deep thinkers eventually learn. Intelligence is not just about insight. It is about timing, knowing when to stay silent, knowing when to speak, and most importantly, knowing who is ready to listen. Think about it. How many times have you walked away thinking, maybe I should have saved that for another moment? This isn't hiding. It is strategy. It is the recognition that truth is not weaker for waiting. Sometimes silence protects it until the right audience arrives. Consider Richard Feynman, a physicist with one of the sharpest minds of the 20th century. But his genius wasn't only in equations, it was in translation. He wrapped complexity in stories, so clear and so playful that anyone could understand. He didn't shrink his intelligence, he invited others into it. And Benjamin Franklin, despite towering intellect, he rarely presented himself as an authority. Instead, he framed his insights as questions, suggestions, shared journeys, and his wisdom felt like a conversation, not a lecture. And in doing so, he carried influence far beyond what raw intelligence alone could have given him. These figures weren't less intelligent than those around them. They were more strategic. They understood the weight of their minds, and they learned how to carry it in ways that others could accept. This is why your task isn't to convince everyone. It is to find your people, the ones who don't flinch when you think aloud, the ones who lean in instead of pulling away. In earlier centuries, this was rare. But today, connection is closer than ever. Books, communities, even the digital world. There are doors everywhere leading to minds like yours. And here is the truth. You don't need the whole crowd to understand you. You only need enough to share ideas, enough to remind you that you're not walking this path alone. So the valley is not the end. It is the passage. It is the place where intelligence is tested, refined, and prepared. Because the real story isn't just about surviving with intelligence. It is about shaping identity through it, not bending to fit into society's comfort, but standing in the clarity of who you are. And that is where we go next. What if the thing the world resists in you is not your flaw, but your strength? What if the silence, the distance, the unease you felt was not exile, but recognition, an unspoken admission that you see what others cannot? For too long, intelligence has been mistaken for arrogance, depth mistaken for detachment, clarity mistaken for coldness. But intelligence is not the weakness they project onto you. It is your identity, rare, distinct, unavoidable. Rejection is not personal. It is patterned. It happens again and again, across time and culture. Socrates, Tesla, thinkers, writers, inventors, who stood too far ahead of their age. They weren't pushed aside because they lacked truth. They were pushed aside because the world wasn't ready to face it. So when people resist you, ask yourself, is it because you are long or because you are early? This is the key. Society has never embraced clarity quickly, and yet it always ends up depending on it. The truths that once drew scorn are the same truths that later reshape civilizations. So rejection, painful as it feels, is not a verdict. It is a signal. Proof that you are carrying something rare enough to disturb the comfortable. What does it mean to live with this? It means you will often stand where comfort ends. It means asking the questions others avoid. It means noticing the cracks beneath the surface while everyone else admires the paint. This role is not easy, but it is necessary, because progress never comes from echoing what everyone already knows. It comes from those who see further, who endure the resistance, who hold their ground when others would rather look away. And maybe that has been your struggle, the weight of seeing, the burden of clarity, but it is also your distinction. You are not here to blend in, you are here to illuminate. You are not exiled, you are aware. You are not fragile, you are untouchable. You were not made to fit the frame, you were made to widen it. Intelligence is not exile. It is proof of strength, proof that you stand where most cannot, and that you carry what few dare to hold. So when the silence grows heavy, when the distance feels sharp, remember this: you are not alone. You are not broken. You are the mirror, the compass, the light others do not yet know how to face. And one day when the world catches up, they will call rare what they once rejected. They will call needed what they once feared. Until then, your task is simple. Do not shrink. Do not bend. Stay true to the clarity you carry. Because in a world that hides from truth, the rare few who dare to see must keep walking. If this video found you at the right time, write in comments, "I will keep walking," and share it with someone who walks the same path.